Every collector's path is different. Some of us hunt for the pristine, while others find beauty in the well-loved corners of a century-old card. Some of us collect what we know. Others dig deep into the research and the great hobby mysteries. But no matter the path, every journey starts in the same place, a love of the game. Welcome to the Love of the Game Auctions podcast. I'm your host, Crisafulli. On this show, we're going beyond the auction block to talk about the legends, the rarities, and the long-forgotten stories that make this hobby great. I'll be joined by guests who live and breathe sports, experts who help us see the hobby through a different lens. So if you value the lore as much as the score, you're in the right place. Let's go. Thanks for being here. I'm Crisafulli of Love of the Game Auctions, and today's story begins with a single photograph, where it's been, what it represents, and why images like this matter so much in the hobby. And after that, we'll be joined by Love of the Game's own Andrew Aronstein to talk about working with century-old photography, what it really means to hold the past in your hands. But let's start with the photo. This is a photo of Jackie Robinson's very first major league at-bat. The photo itself came as part of a nice consignment of memorabilia, and the owner knew what he had. He knew how important that photo was, but he didn't know what the meaning of it was and really where it stood in the whole hobby in general. Andrew one day came into my office, and he does this a lot. He came into my office with a photo, and he just said, "Do you know what this is?" I took a look at the photo, and it was a beautiful shot of Ebbets Field, probably taken from the press box or maybe above the press box, and captures almost the entire field during a game. You can see everybody on the field except for the right fielder, but it was just a game. So I asked Andrew, no, what is it? What am I looking at? And he said, it's the most important sports photo that's ever been taken. Now, obviously, Jackie Robinson was big news in New York in 1947. He was big news everywhere. But he had signed with the Montreal Royals, and he played the 1946 season in Canada. And everybody knew, the first black baseball player is maybe going to be Jackie Robinson, and maybe he's going to play with the Dodgers. He trained with the Royals in Cuba in spring training of 1947. The Dodgers also trained there, so they kind of trained together. And during an exhibition game, when they came back up and were getting ready for the season, during an exhibition game between the Royals and the Dodgers in the spring of 1947, Branch Rickey announced that the Dodgers had taken Jackie Robinson's contract. They had purchased Jackie Robinson's contract from the Royals, and that he was going to start the season with the Brooklyn Dodgers, making him the first black player in Major League Baseball history. Now, we do this podcast with a production company, and they help ask me about this is provide quick context on the athlete and the event. How do you provide quick context on Jackie Robinson? Is he the most important American athlete? Is he maybe one of the most important figures in American history? I think so. And how do you provide context to what it meant to have Jackie Robinson take the field in a Major League Baseball uniform and do something that no one had ever done before, and what it meant not just for the game, but for the people that Jackie Robinson represented, and how emotional that is even talking about it today. What I didn't realize at the time that I was looking at this photo, there are lots of photos of Jackie Robinson from early 1947. They're posed photos all around Ebbets Field. Jackie posed with teammates. He posed with a bat. He posed with a glove, all over the place. And there's a lot of those photos around. But there are no photos of the actual event, that first at bat. This photo that we had is the only known Type 1 photo. And it's a beautiful photo. Now, if you take a look, it's a very clear photo. Imagery is very sharp. You can see the advertisements on the fence, on the outfield wall. You can see the crowd beginning to come into the stands. I think 26,000 people were there for that game. You can see players on the field. You can see their shadows behind them. You can see the way the grass is cut in Ebbets Field. Everything about this photo is beautiful at first glance. But if you look a little bit closer, you can see the world changing. We had no idea what this photo was going to sell for. On the closing day of the auction, It sold for $49,200, the highest price ever paid for any stadium photo. The price was nice, but the fact that it was an original photo of the most important moment in baseball history, that photo is a bargain at 10 times the price. And that's the story behind the sale. My guest today quite literally grew up inside the hobby. Andrew Aronstein is a second-generation hobby professional, the son of hobby pioneer Mike Aronstein, whose companies helped shape the modern minor league card market and licensed sports photography industries. Andrew spent years as the archivist at Photofile, working hands-on with hundreds of thousands of original sports photographs dating back to the early 1900s, images that help define how generations of fans remember the game. Today, he serves as senior operations manager here at Love of the Game Auctions. Andrew, welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too. It's like Wednesday.
Yeah.
So before we get started, why don't you tell everybody what you do at Love of the Game?
Well, this time of year, I'm making sure the auction gets built. We're 3 days away from our deadline for a spring auction.
And you're here on a podcast?
Hey. And spring auction is very important to us. We want to get the year off on the right foot. So we're working hard to put something amazing together, getting ready for prime time before we send it out into the world and let everybody play with it. So
it's gonna be a good one. By the time this podcast episode airs, the auction will be over. So let's make some predictions here in terms of what do you think is going to be the highest selling item in the auction?
Boy, put me on the spot here. I don't know. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's going to be hard to beat the Boston Store Ruth. I think, that's
you're right about that.
That's pretty cut and dry. But there's some other special pieces in this one too, and I think the one that I'm most curious about is the Pete Hill autograph, and what that winds up selling for. That should be pretty crazy.
Yeah,
or could be.
Yeah, that's an exciting piece. I know something I'd like to get into later is that's a new discovery.
Yeah.
And those are really the most exciting things that come through our door.
I agree. We've had a number of those. So let's start at the beginning. You grew up in the business. Did it just feel normal at the time, or did you realize early how significant what your father was doing was?
It did feel both. It felt normal, but I was aware from a very early age what was going on because especially, I was born in 78 and really in the early 80s started kind of the boom for the hobby and for just the industry in general, in Major League Baseball. And my father was very entrepreneurial, so there were always deals happening. There were always talk about licensing.
Sure.
So I was just immersed in it at all times.
Right.
Whether it was like my own collecting or like going to the office with my dad. What
did you collect as a kid?
God, everything. I mean, I was not only collecting baseball cards, I was collecting comic books and role-playing games and just, all manner of collectibles.
So not even just sports.
No. I was into everything.
TCMA, which was the company that your father founded or co-founded, right? Co-founded?
Mm-hmm. So quick story.
Yeah.
TCMA was founded in 1972. And my father's partner was a collector by the name of Tom Collier. And he was really only involved in the company for the first year. People don't realize that.
Right.
So my father bought him out early on and then, kind of continued on his own.
Tom Collier, Mike Aronstein. But there was another acronym there too, wasn't it? What was it?
Right. And that was actually coined by Tom. And that was the Card Memorabilia Associates.
Okay. Gotcha.
Right.
So now TCMA really, among other things, helped shape the minor league card market. And in a lot of ways, it helped create the rookie card craze. Why did that matter then? And why do you think it matters now?
Well, I think rookie cards in general, especially at that time, gave the casual collector and the casual fan something in the hobby to latch onto.
Yeah.
And, I think that was important. And the hobby really ran with that.
Sure.
And today, we're seeing the effects of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what the TCMA minor league cards in particular did was it gave collectors an alternative. Yeah, and not only in the minor league cards, but in the early years of TCMA, they were doing all the sets of the great teams.
Sure.
And, and those in particular were an alternative to collecting mainstream Topps cards.
I'll tell you, when I was a kid, and I say this a lot, I was a collector when I was 8, 9 years old, and I had this interest in baseball history and in owning cards of people like Babe Ruth, and I couldn't afford them. And so I had the 1927 Yankees TCMA set. I had the 1960 Pirates TCMA set. I had a lot of those sets that my mom got me as gifts, birthday gifts, Christmas gifts, and things like that, so that I could have cards of players that I couldn't find or couldn't have. There was no internet. There was no way to get on eBay and find an affordable card of Babe Ruth or even Mickey Mantle. So in a lot of cases, it was the TCMA cards that filled that hole for me.
Did you have the 1919 Black Sox set?
I did not. I didn't.
One.
Yeah. I didn't have that one. Which is the one that does the best today? Which of the TCMA sets? Is there like one that's the big set?
No, I mean, in terms of individual cards, it's the minor league cards of the star players like John Elway,
sure,
and Don Mattingly and Ryne Sandberg in particular. The Ryne Sandberg card. There are two Ryne Sandberg cards. There's one with a white border and one with a red border, and the one with the red border is the one. It's far more scarce because it's a black and white card image.
Sure,
right, and those were produced in far lesser quantities than the color cards were.
Okay,
people may not realize that, and the print runs of those cards were 1,000 cards or 3,000 cards. Right. Even though today I see the look on your face, some people think those cards might have been printed later because there was but as far as I know, that didn't happen. So
well, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. I've actually never heard that about TCMA cards, by the way.
Okay, well, I have.
I've never heard that about TCMA cards.
But listen, I was a child when it happened, so
right.
Hey.
So now you grow up with TCMA, and your father is involved with that company. He gets involved and starts Photofile, yeah?
Yep.
And then you wind up an employee at Photofile, handling these original photos and negatives from the early 1900s. How did that happen, and how did it feel?
Well, the original photos and negs ended up in the files of Photofile because they were in my father's collection, and he used a lot of those for TCMA cards.
Sure.
So a lot of
is that why he acquired them for use in cards?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. He was buying up photo archives, and he was buying up collections of negatives exclusively for that purpose.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons why he finds it so incredible that the photos and negs are selling for what they're selling for now, because he never looked at those as collectibles. He looked at those as tools to be used to make cards, just like a news photo service would have used those photos or those negs, for images in their paper.
I think that's why they're so collectible, because they weren't meant to be. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
They were chopped up and cut and thrown away and destroyed, and masking agent all over them and all of that. And now finding a nice one is not easy.
Right. And working with that material so, intimately, I was able to really immerse myself in all the different eras, the 30s, the 40s.
Yeah.
And the types of negatives that were used across the different eras changed.
Sure.
So it was really, really interesting.
Yeah. So how does this inform your interest in becoming knowledgeable about photography in general? Right? Like, so you're handling these photos, and at some point you get the bug and you become photo guy.
Right.
How does this, and where do you even go to learn about it? Like, how do you progress in your knowledge?
Well, now, I mean, growing up, for me, these images were everywhere.
Right.
Okay. They were on the cards. They were in the books, like, because my father was supplying authors, especially,
Oh, I didn't know this.
especially Don Honig's books.
Huh.
You flip through. Don Honig was prolific in the 80s, creating, I don't even know how many books,
Sure.
dozen,
Yeah.
filled with photography. And he would even put my name in the acknowledgments.
No kidding.
Like, my name, if you look in those books, my name is next to Larry Ritter, and I'm 8 years old.
That's pretty great.
Yeah. So, that's how I kind of absorbed all this material, is through the books, through the cards. And, and then working with the original negs and the original photos just, furthered, my interest. But now with the internet, obviously, is really how I'm able to absorb more and see, what has come from other archives, and, through auction house sites, and just a lot of research.
Right.
But digging through the Library of Congress and archives of different museums, that's just, you just got to have this thirst for absorbing this material. And
when you're handling these photos from the early 1900s, those is it safe to say that those dead ball photos are the ones that are your favorites?
Oh yeah.
So what is it?
Yeah,
what does that?
sure.
What does it make you feel to go through these? These are players that
Mhm.
you don't know. You didn't grow up with them or anything like that. But
Right.
you're handling these photos. What is the feeling that they give you?
Well, I mean, I can tell you what draws me to them. It's the aesthetics of the era,
Okay.
because it's the game was just becoming, what what we know now as baseball, and it was
Sure.
just starting to become that during the dead ball era, and it's becoming modernized. So it's familiar enough, for us to recognize that it's modern baseball, but it's
Yeah.
different enough for us to feel like it's something completely different. And that's a fascinating thing to me. And also,
Sure.
I grew up playing baseball, and looking at those images from the lens of a ball player, it interests me. Like, I want to know what it was like to play for the team that Ty Cobb was on.
Yeah.
I want to know, when I look at a photo of the 1912 Giants, I want to know who was the clown, who was the guy who took everything seriously, who would, what their
Yeah.
personalities were like. And, just, you look at the ballparks, what was the fan experience like? Because it's so completely different than, you go to a Mets game today and you're just blasted with dance music the
Yeah.
entire game. And there's digital screens, and there's stores, and the Polo Grounds, when it was made of wood, there's there's none of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It makes sense.
mhm.
Um, so when you're examining an original photo, what do you see that you think most collectors miss?
Well, one thing I'm looking for, one thing that I ask myself, I want to know what the photo is used for, number one. And sometimes the photos are shot as, I guess, what we would consider today to be a series.
Uh-huh.
So, one thing that comes to mind is there's a famous series of Ty Cobb images that were shot by Brown Brothers at the Polo Grounds, and I think it was 1914. And there's also the Paul Thompson series of Babe Ruth,
Right.
From 1920. And if you do your research online, you can figure out what the other photos were in that series.
Right.
So sometimes when I'm doing research for something else, I'll stumble across an image and I'll say, "Hey, wait a minute, that's one I haven't seen related to this
series."
And there was, so yeah, I mean, I guess photos that are related to each other is something that interests me.
Right.
Especially when you just discover it without looking for it.
Right.
So there was one, I do have a story about that. I have a photo of, I forget who the two players are, but they're in the 1920s Giants.
All right.
It might be Irish Musial and High Pockets Kelly off the top of my head. And the photo I had, or still have, is one of them is sliding into a base, and the other one's tagging.
Okay.
And it's opposed, it's posed at spring training. So I had that for years. And I was at the National going through a dealer's bin, and I came across the same photo. And I said, oh, I have this photo. And I went to put it back, and I realized that it was the same two players, but they were in the opposite position.
Huh.
Yeah. So I'm like, all right, now I have to buy this.
So you have both. Were they both taken at the same same?
Yeah. Oh yeah, at the same time.
That's pretty cool. Where was it? Where was the photo taken? At Polo Grounds?
No, spring training.
Oh, okay.
Probably in Florida somewhere.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So, that's something that's in the back of my head when especially if I see an image I haven't seen before.
Right.
I think learning about vintage photography and what to look for is, it's an acquired skill, but you can develop it.
Sure.
You just need to look at a lot of photos.
Yes. It makes sense. I know that since we've been selling so many more photos, I've learned a lot, just from what's come into the office. It's hard to be an expert at everything when you're running an auction house. And I think that that's something that sometimes collectors don't realize, that the hobby is very wide and very deep. And so it's hard to get all of that expertise in one person. And this is why it's great that we have such varied skills in the office, your knowledge of photos has really helped grow our photo, not only the expertise, but the quality of the photos that we offer in our auctions. Let's go back to working at Photofile and working with the archive. And I'm heading in a direction of kind of a thorny sort of. So let's talk a little bit about working at Photofile and handling all of these historically significant photos. Did working there help? How did it shape how you think about authenticity and the originality, especially in a hobby that's so focused on condition? How did working at Photofile help shape your opinions about vintage photography and specifically collecting it?
So yeah, you're right. This is a sticky subject. But
we're gonna get stickier. So
we'll get into that. Well, part of my responsibility working with the archive at Photofile, and eventually was my main responsibility, was getting it ready to be sold.
Right.
And a lot of that material had really sat untouched for decades and decades and decades.
Now, that came together from a variety of different archives, right? Newspapers, magazines.
Well, I'm speaking specifically about the vintage photography.
Right.
Because you were in that archive room.
Yeah. Yeah, it was amazing.
There were hundreds of thousands of photos and negatives because they had been, before, the advancement of digital photography, they were shooting with 35 millimeter.
Yeah.
And right. So all this 35 millimeter from the 70s through the 90s, really, that was all housed in there with the prints that were, created using those negs. But yeah, working with the vintage photography, Photofile really didn't have a use for that stuff. And part of it was because Photofile dealt with a lot of hot market wholesale sales.
Sure. So they were selling. They were selling into mass retail, right? Manufactured memorabilia and photos. They were also selling to athletes who were doing signings at shows, right?
Right. But
so there wasn't a lot of a call for 1909 Chicago White Sox photos. Okay.
Right. And also rights, the whole, deal with rights, because you need to have, technically, if you want to do it right, you need to have an agreement from the state of the blah, 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 blah. So, we won't get into that. But, so I was preparing this material for to be auctioned.
Right.
And at the time, I didn't realize what was necessarily happening in the hobby in terms of what was being done to photos that were coming to the market.
Right.
I had the pleasure of dealing with thousands and thousands of original photographs that emanated directly from a newspaper archive, in this case, the Police Gazette, for the most part. And they had not been messed with at all. By anyone other than the people that were actually editing them or cropping them.
So they may have been cut up by a newspaper. They may have had masking agent applied, and they may have had any number of editorial markings written onto the photo because that's why they got them. That's what they were for, right? Back in the day, there's no Adobe Illustrator, there's no Photoshop, there's none of this technology that we have today. So they actually had to literally cut and paste the photos onto a board and create what would become the pages of a newspaper or a magazine or something like that. So that's why you see a lot of damage, and it's also why they're rare, right? Because they got chopped up and used.
And a lot of them just didn't survive. In many cases, especially when it comes to deadball era material, that one photo that's out there is probably it. If there are 3 of a photo out there in the hobby, that's a lot, especially from 1903 through 1920.
Right. So, but even though they did that, when you were at Photofile, you also handled a lot of photos that were clean and original with their borders and the right size and all of this. How does that shape your opinion today about the rarity and about the condition of photos?
Well, to me, I think we touched on this before. One of the most exciting things in the hobby is when something, emerges that no one has seen before.
Sure.
And I think the closest you can get to that feeling when something has been out there in the hobby, and as things get sold and resold over the years, no one wants to feel as though something that they'd like to own has been altered. At least I don't.
Right.
And I've seen cases, and you have too, because I know I've shown them to you, where a photo has sold once and it looked a certain way, and then it sold again and something else was changed. It might have been cropped or something was removed, like editorial masking that had been there for 100 years that was removed to make it look a little nicer, and then it sold again and it changed again. So you can see this kind of evolution of how one piece changed over the years, because these people who are buying and selling are trying to increase their profits.
Yeah. So what are some of the kinds of things that are happening to these original photos to improve their visual appeal, to try and increase profits on resale? What are some of the things that you're seeing with photos?
Well, for a large part of what you're talking about, it's cleaning of the photos, which I think even the Hall of Fame cleans photos, so they will do that for preservation purposes in certain cases,
right?
But it's not necessary in every case, and if you know what to look for, a lot of times you can spot on an original press photo where editorial masking has been removed.
Right. Can you explain editorial masking? Can you explain that a little bit for people who might be watching and not know?
Yeah. So the newspaper that was working with the photo might have applied editorial masking to silhouette a player, so they could just use the player's image in publication.
So they're cutting out the background with a chemical treatment, or it's almost like a whiteout, right?
Right. And in a lot of cases, that treatment is water soluble. so it can be removed with water, but a lot of times it leaves kind of a halo.
Right.
So, actually, this goes back to what you were talking about before in terms of what I look for that other people might not see. I will always tilt the photo towards the light source, because when you do that, you can see where that sort of halo might be.
Doesn't it kind of take some of the emulsion off the photo?
When
you remove that agent?
I don't think so, because it's sitting on top.
So what causes that ability? It's almost like that area is more flat than the rest of the gloss on the photo, right? When you see that halo,
I'm sure there's a reason for that. I'm not sure exactly. I think it's probably because the part of that masking, it has embedded itself into the emulsion to some degree, and it just can't be removed. That would be my guess. But in some cases, the masking is not water soluble at all and would need to be chemically removed, which a conservator might do.
Sure.
But in general, the emulsion is delicate and can be scratched. So it's always risky when you're trying to remove that type of thing.
Sure.
And if an amateur is doing it, if you have a valuable photo and an amateur is attempting to remove it and doesn't know what they're doing, you're probably causing more damage than you realize. So you've got that, and there's trimming, which is that goes on a lot.
The trimming piece of it it's a weird, because so many of those photos were hacked up by the newspapers to begin with, right? So they had a picture of 3 players and they needed the guy in the middle, so they chopped it up a little bit and then they used just that photo. That happens a lot. You see like a strip that has just one player in the strip, and you just know there were players next to him in the bigger photo. So that happened. Go on.
Have I shown you that photo of the 1917 White Sox?
Yeah, that's one of the ones that I'm actually thinking of in my mind when I'm explaining it. So that process of chopping up some of those photos, that was a natural part of the paste up process of creating a newspaper. Very, very different than trimming away some wrinkles or pinholes from the borders of a photo to make it look nicer for resale today, right?
Right.
So where's the line? Is there a line that you draw somewhere? It's hard, right?
It's hard because here, let me throw it back at you. So let's say you have a historic type 1 photo of Jackie Robinson, but he's completely covered in masking all around his body.
Yeah.
And you want to sell it. So now what do you do?
I know what we do. We leave it the way it is. And I think as a collector, that's what I would do. I feel like what that does, if I were to draw a comparison to cards, right, I would say that, that masking agent is the equivalent of a crease in a card. It's there. It reduces the condition of the card, and you shouldn't monkey around with it because, we're treating this hobby like we're assigning a premium to cards that have survived in better condition. This photo has not survived in its pristine condition. It still has value. It's still important. It's still a great photo. I would not be in favor of removing the masking agent. That's just me. I know that there are other collectors who do it just as a matter of course. They clean their photos. But it's something to be aware of. The way the PSA type system is created right now and the way it works, it doesn't provide for condition, right? And that becomes part of the problem, I think.
Yeah, they're just speaking to the authenticity of the photo, not a grade.
Yeah. So now if a collector was interested in, because I think the genie's out of the bottle on this. I think that there are too many of these photos that have had the borders removed, that have been trimmed down, that have been cleaned, that have even had more than just editorial masking. There's in painting that I've seen happen to remove, some of those, there's all kinds of stuff that's getting done to photos. And I think the horse has left the barn. I don't know how you put the horse back in the barn. So what should collectors be looking for if they want unaltered photos in their collection?
Well, they need to take a really close look at the scans that they find, through auction house sites, and especially look at the corners, because a photo that was trimmed yesterday, it's really thin paper, especially when you're talking about the dead ball era photos.
Yeah.
Very, very thin paper. So those edges are going to be razor sharp. Right. So that's one giveaway.
Right.
The other giveaway is if the photo's not a standard paper size. So, standard paper sizes that were used are 5x7, 6.5 by 8.5, 7x9, 8x10, and larger format, 11x14.
11x14, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're buying a photo and it's not one of those sizes, and it's, a quarter of an inch or half an inch off some of those dimensions, that's a red flag.
Right.
And there were other paper sizes that were used, but those were the most common.
Well, like the Bain photos, those 5x7?
They were
different smaller sizes. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, because all the Bain photos are contact prints.
Right.
Meaning the negative was right up against the photo paper when it was developed. They didn't do any enlarging.
Right. Okay. So you've seen the hobby. I mean, you've been in the hobby since you were a baby. You were on the cover of the second program. What was it? The fourth program for the national, the fourth national. Right. How have you seen, what do you think has changed the most about the hobby?
Oh, well, certainly grading. I mean, I remember as a kid sitting on, in my dad's office at home with a hobby publication and reading about PSA.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I remember this too. Yeah.
What is whoa, what is this?
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think, on top of that, the biggest thing is just the number of collectors that are involved now.
Yeah.
And with, now we can all deal with each other all day, every day with the internet. And we have all these different avenues through which to buy and sell and trade and talk to each other this, do a podcast.
It's nonstop. It's nonstop. Yeah.
The, what's the word I'm looking for? Just sharing information.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like to say that it used to be that building a 1933 Gaudi set, might be something that a collector worked on for their whole life, that took them forever to do. And maybe they didn't get it done. Maybe they couldn't find a handful of cards. And today, if you have enough money, you could do it in a week.
Right.
And it's the same thing with any set, if it's easy enough to have access to it. If you look enough and if you poke around enough, you can find the thing you're looking for and have it tomorrow. Whereas, before the internet, that might be there would be cards that you might never, ever see. And I think that's a good thing. Right. And, I'm a big fan of that because I think it brings the hobby to more people. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one thing I always say is, before eBay.
Yeah.
If you wanted a card, and there were card shows near you or a card store near you, and you went to your card store, you went to the card show, you would be restricted to what was there.
Yeah.
And it's that's the card I need. There it is. I should buy it. So that was the card in your collection. And then, maybe down the line, you might upgrade, or if you can find another one. Now you just go on eBay and you take your pick of which one you want.
Right. It's pretty crazy. You can, and you can also find historical sales, right? Where you can see that very card that you just bought or that you might buy, where it most recently sold and how much and all of that, which is pretty cool and gives you more knowledge, and more knowledge is always good if you're a consumer.
And also, I just want to add to that. also I also kind of grew up with the change of, this going from a hobby to an industry.
Yeah.
And because really, I mean, sort of my father's evolution too was like he started as a collector, and then, he was in business in the hobby, and just like how that whole thing just took off. And
sure.
He had a hand in a lot of these different aspects of the hobby that just turned into what we have today. So it was
so with this, I mean, much has been, you've talked a lot about the Wagner or the Wagners that your dad owned.
Mm-hmm.
And you've had all of this amazing stuff in and out of your life over your life. Then you had the archive that you worked for. Now you work at Love of the Game, where there's historically significant stuff coming in the door every day. Has there ever been a thing that you've held in your hand that you said, like, with all the hobby knowledge that you have now, has there ever been a thing that you held and thought, wow, this is really special, this is really something?
Yes. So I mentioned before about one of my responsibilities in the archive was preparing that material to be auctioned.
Yeah.
And part of that process was, and you were part of this process.
I was not the part that I wanted it to be, though. I was the part of the sorry, right. Go home, you lose. But go. But go on. Love of the Game did not sell those photos.
Part of the process was I was speaking to the different auction houses.
Yes.
And so I would be on the phone with different people, and they would come in and I would tour them through the archive and show them what we had, and they would be very impressed. And it was, because I knew what we had, and I wanted to find the right fit. And so one day, let me back up. So one thing I did during this process was I sent out an email to employees of the company, like letting them know what I was doing and what I was looking for, and asking them to please bring any material that they had that needed to be returned to the archive, set it on in this area so that I can go through it and make sure there's nothing I'm looking for in there.
Right.
So people had been, doing that over the course of several days, whatever. And one day, I'm on the phone with an auction house that I won't mention, and I'm just on the phone with them. And as I'm on the phone, I'm just like flipping through a stack of photos,
right?
Just modern photos, it's like Dwight Gooden and Darryl Strawberry. And I turn one over, and there is this Hannes Wagner portrait shot by Conlon.
Wow.
And it was like the most incredible thing. I was not expecting to see that.
That's fantastic.
And I audibly gasped. I was on the phone and I was, I went, oh!
That was not me you were on the phone with. No. I would remember this.
No, but I was like, oh my God. And I had to explain, and I apologized and explained to the person I was talking to what I just found. And that was very, very exciting. And
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And that photo has not resurfaced. So I don't know what happened to it.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I have two more quick ones before we wrap up. The first one is we're gonna take an opportunity here. I'm gonna ask you a yes/no question.
Okay. Do I have to answer yes, no?
Yes, you do. You have to answer yes, no.
I don't like this already. Okay.
No, you're gonna like this. You're gonna like this one.
Mm-hmm.
Can you please tell the hobby? Was Paul Thompson a photographer?
Well, yes, I can tell the hobby. Would you like me to?
Yes, I would.
Paul Thompson was not a photographer.
When somebody says this photo was captured by the lens of Paul Thompson.
It was not.
It was not.
No.
Can you explain that very quickly?
Very quickly, yes. Paul Thompson owned the company that would send, he owned a news photo service.
Yes.
And he would send the photographers out, multiple photographers, to capture images. And that, for him, it really took place between 1905 and 1925-ish.
Right.
And, they were predominantly shooting at the Polo Grounds in Upper Manhattan and Hilltop Park, which was in Harlem, essentially.
So the only lenses of Paul Thompson were the ones in his eyes. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So if an auction house tries to tell you that Paul Thompson took the photo,
not necessarily just an auction house, but anyone, yes, Paul Thompson didn't take any photos that we know of. Okay. Last question, because we close every episode of the podcast with this same question.
Oh boy.
You've got to think quick on this one. Okay. I don't want a lot of thought. I'm looking for the first thing that comes to mind here. Was there an event? What was the event? What was the thing that happened that caused you to fall in love with the game?
Okay. October 11th, 1986. Do you know what happened on that?
What happened on that day?
So I was
feel like there was some mistake, some horrible thing that happened that day. Go on, tell us.
I was 8 years old. And that was Game 3 of the 1986 NLCS. That was the seminal moment in my life in terms of my love for baseball.
Tell us quickly about that game.
So my favorite player at the time, was Lenny Dykstra.
Okay.
And
all around good guy, but go on.
So he hit the game-winning walk-off home run against the Astros, and to me that was the greatest thing that had ever happened. And at the time I thought, wow, like being a Mets fan is going to be amazing. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
And and that didn't turn out so well, but it's interesting because I can also point to the seminal moment in my father's life, and that was October 3rd, 1951, when Bobby Thompson hit the shot heard around the world.
That was one of the most important home runs that's ever been hit.
It was the most important home run that's ever been hit.
This, for everybody who's unaware of what's happening right now, this is a discussion that's happened in the office for the last month. So it's
I'm gonna die on that hill.
You can put in the comments if you think that Bobby Thompson's home run was the most important home run that's ever hit in baseball.
And if not, I'd like to want to know why.
Or what is, maybe Hank Aaron's home run, or maybe the one home run that Fred Stanley hit in 1976. But could it be Joe Carter's home run? Could it be Bill Mazeroski's home run?
The golden age of baseball.
They didn't even win. They didn't even win the World Series. But okay, we could talk about it. But I'd like to see in the comments what everybody else thinks.
I'd be curious to see that.
Yes, Andrew, it was great having you. I haven't seen you in a while. It's been
like 12 hours.
And thanks for spending time with us while you're right in the middle of putting an auction together. I do appreciate it.